The powers that be are trying to keep this quiet, but right now in North America, there is a very serious situation developing that is so horrific that not even the most disturbed horror science fiction writers would have even dreamed of it. In the next 20 to 25 years, the baby boomers are going to start to pass on. But because there are so many of them, they're going to overwhelm the morgues, overwhelm the mortuaries. There's not going to be enough embalmers or morticians to be able to deal with the crush of bodies being thrown at them. And on top of that, there's not going to be enough stonemasons or people willing to go out and dig the holes for a proper funeral. They're going to have to start to make mandatory the idea of cremation, unless you have already prepaid for something way ahead of time, and even then, they may not honor it. It's going to be a manpower problem. Not enough blue-collar labor, not enough people willing to get into that business, and on orders of magnitude 8 to 10 times the amount of, well, I guess corpses, not people, needing that service. Nobody's seeing it coming. We're going to talk more about this because we can't really talk about it here at YouTube, but we'll talk about it at Patreon. Speaking of which, brand spanking new video just posted a couple of hours ago. It's on something called the fundamental attribution error. Now, before you keep scrolling, I know that sounds like one of those topics that you wanted to skip in psych. Oh, fundamental, gosh, I'm going to do the cliff notes. I'm going to have somebody hand in the assignment for me. This sounds so boring. Believe me, when you start to understand it and you start to grasp what it really means, it explains something that's happening right now in North America and around the world in politics that'll make everything clear as a bell. Right now, nothing seems to make sense. You elect one group of people because they say they're going to do something, and then they do the opposite thing. And then there's another group of people who think they're going to get elected, alleging that they're going to do things that are just batshit crazy. I believe it has something to do with the fundamental attribution error. Now, if you'd like to join us over there, this particular video we just posted is for every level. McKee Foot Soldiers all the way up to Need to Know Roundtable. Everybody's invited for this one because it applies to everybody, and I think everybody can understand the concept if they apply it correctly. Now, here's where things get a little sideways on this topic. It seems like this wouldn't have anything to do with anything, but it does. It has directly to do with the idea. Fundamental attribution error is basically the idea in a nutshell that when we do certain things and they don't work out the way we think, we forgive ourselves and say, well, I was under stress, or I had this wrong piece of information, or this other thing went wrong, and that's why I did this and it didn't work out. Whereas if it's someone else, we never give them the benefit of the doubt. They were just stupid and wrong from the beginning and never had any good intentions, and they should just get smarter. They should educate themselves. Now, Russia's birth rate plunges to 200-year low. Now, ask yourself a question, and I've asked it before. Why aren't people having babies? You see, people know how to have babies. You don't even have to teach people how to have babies. I guarantee if I took 10 16-year-old guys and 50 16-year-old girls and I put them on a desert island somewhere and came back in 100 years, we would have a thriving civilization. Or the beginning of a thriving civilization. They would figure it out. People have been figuring it out since time immemorial. Why do people stop having babies? Because of fear? I'm sure a lot of people are like, Well, it's a terrible time to have babies. Things are so expensive and this, that, and the other. Really? How many of you remember the baby boom, what we led the video with? The baby boom came about after World War II. After World War II might have been one of the single scariest times to ever have been alive. There were two nations in the world, the United States and Russia, that were actively popping off H-bombs all over the world, testing them. This particular one you're looking at is 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The idea of nuclear annihilation wasn't some pie-in-the-sky fantasy from the past. But what were people doing? Okay, well, we'll just build a bunker underground that fits Tommy and Susie and Katie and Mom and Dad and some canned food and got a radio, and they were still having babies. In fact, they were having babies at a rate far greater than they ever had before. Even when the world was one of the most terrifying places to live in. Some people might say it's money. America's never been wealthier. America has never been wealthier. Childcare has never been better. Fundamental attribution error. Why aren't we doing something versus why isn't anyone else doing something? Now, here's the part, and I'll give you the link to the details of how bad things are in Russia. The numbers are frightening. In the next, by 20, I think it said 2070, they could be looking at a population of Russia about what it was in 1897. That's how bad it's getting. There's this neat article, though, just put out 30 April 2025. The idea of 2.1 kids per woman not being enough for population survival. That you might need 2.7 children per woman, but it gets better when you read down the article. There's something that happens naturally in populations when they are faced with daunting scenarios or fear. More women, more female babies are born than male. Now, that you have to ask, wait a minute, hold on. The study found that due to random fluctuations in birth numbers, a fertility rate of at least 2.7 children per woman is needed to reliably avoid eventual extinction, especially in small populations. However, a female-biased birth ratio with more females than males born reduces the extinction risk, helping more lineages survive over time. Under severe conditions such as war, famine, or environmental disruption, more females tend to be born than males. Now, what would that say once that group of children reached reproductive age? That you'd have, for every 2 males, you'd have 10 females. What would be the eventual outcome? Is that you're exactly right. You'd have more than one woman per man having children. Men would have children by multiple women. False consensus effect. Another psychological dysphoria that we have. Believing that most people in your community support your ideas because they've supported other things that you've agreed with. See, we have this idea in our country that the way we're going to save America is the 50-50 thing. 50% women, 50% men, everybody pairs off, everybody has kids. That isn't how nature works. When things get bad, things tend to move towards a way that's going to fix the problem. And that's hand of God, not science. You see, there's things I want to say here and I can't. We'll have to say them over at Patreon. But I think a lot of you are thinking the same thing. You see, the real reason right now that Americans and Russians are not having babies is the shame factor. They're not ashamed of kids. They're ashamed of the poverty. They're ashamed of not having the expendable income that all of their non-child having friends will have. Dolly Parton. We talk about her today over at the Patreon channel. She said the worst thing about poverty isn't the actual living of it, but the shame of it. And it explains a lot about how this girl, who was just a singer and a songwriter and a guitar player, felt the need to get giant implants to further her career. Something else to think about. Gold is useless. Gold is useless in any survival situation. If you've got kids, if you're trying to get by, if you're trying to survive, the only use that gold has for you is if somebody else values it enough to give you what they value for it. It's only a medium of exchange. In and of itself, it has no value. People back in the 50s didn't hoard gold. Very few people owned gold. Almost nobody did. They owned things that had worth. They owned things that had value. I'll bet mom and dad here probably could have had quite a few more cases of canned goods over here to the right if they had deleted one of these children. Or just decided to, dad goes get snipped or mom has hysterectomy or whatever. Why didn't they? They were living in a world of fear. Why were the boomers coming out in 3 and 4 and 5 and families of 6 kids in the 50s? It's kind of a tough one, isn't it? But once again, this is why we keep the channel going. And this is why we take the gloves off over at Patreon. And we talk about things they don't want to talk about. They don't want to be public here. Because if you start to open your mouth about what's really happened in this country and why you can't have kids and why people don't want to have kids and why there's not even going to be enough people left to bury those who die, folks, we got to go to Patreon to do it. It just is what it is. So I'll leave it there. God bless. Join us. Love to have you. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.